My name is Charlotte Robinson. I'm 32 years old, and this is the story of how my dad told me I'd never be successful. Then I launched my $500,000 business. I still remember the exact moment those words left his mouth. We were sitting in his old living room, the one with the worn-out couch and the faded family photos on the wall. I had just told him about my dream of starting my own business, my eyes full of hope and excitement. But instead of encouragement, he looked at me with that dismissive expression I knew so well and said, "Charlotte, you're not cut out for this. You'll never make it." Those words hit me like a punch to the gut, and for a moment I felt my entire world crumble. Have you ever been told by someone you love that you're not good enough? If you have, then you know exactly how I felt in that moment. If this story resonates with you, hit that like button and subscribe, because what happens next will show you that sometimes the people who doubt us the most become our greatest motivation. The pain of hearing those words from my own father was unlike anything I'd experienced before. This wasn't some random stranger on the internet or a jealous coworker. This was the man who was supposed to believe in me no matter what. I felt my hands start to shake, and I could barely hold back the tears that were building up behind my eyes. Part of me wanted to scream, to tell him he was wrong, but another part of me started to believe he might be right. What if I really wasn't good enough? What if I was just delusional, chasing a dream that was way beyond my reach? That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words over and over in my mind, each repetition cutting deeper than the last. The worst part wasn't even the words themselves. It was the certainty in his voice. Like my failure was already written in stone. But here's the thing about rock bottom. It's solid ground to build on. As I lay there in the darkness of my bedroom, staring at the ceiling, something inside me shifted. Maybe it was anger, maybe it was stubbornness, or maybe it was just pure survival instinct kicking in. I made a decision that night that would change everything. I was going to prove him wrong, not for him, but for me. I didn't know how I was going to do it, and I definitely didn't have all the answers. But I knew one thing for certain. I refused to let his words become my reality. You won't believe what happened next, because that moment of pain became the catalyst for the biggest transformation of my life. Let me take you back to who I was before that conversation, before everything changed. I grew up in a pretty traditional household where my dad, Robert Robinson, was the head of the family and his word was law. He was a factory worker for 30 years, a man who believed in stability, routine, and playing it safe. My mom, Susan, was a school teacher who always supported my dad's views, even when I could see the doubt in her eyes. Growing up, I was the middle child, not the golden firstborn son, my brother Michael, who could do no wrong, and not the baby of the family, my sister Emma, who got away with everything. I was just Charlotte, the one who was expected to be practical, to get a regular job, to marry someone stable, and to never rock the boat. From a young age, I felt like I was living in a box that someone else had built for me, and every time I tried to peek outside of it, I was pushed back in. The relationship with my father was complicated, to say the least. He wasn't a bad man. He provided for our family, he showed up to school events, and he never raised his hand to us. But emotionally, that was a different story. Robert Robinson didn't believe in big dreams or taking risks. To him, entrepreneurship was just a fancy word for unemployment waiting to happen. I remember being 15 years old, sketching out business ideas in my notebook during class, dreaming about creating something of my own. When I showed him one of my ideas, a small online store selling handmade jewelry, he laughed it off and told me to focus on getting good grades so I could get a real job. That became the pattern of our relationship. Me dreaming, him dismissing. By the time I was in my mid-20s, I had learned to keep my dreams to myself because sharing them only led to disappointment. But that night, when I was 30 years old, I broke my own rule, and I paid the price for it. What I didn't realize back then was that my father's words weren't really about me. They were about him. He projected his own fears, his own limitations, and his own regrets onto me. Robert had probably had dreams once too. Dreams that he buried under the weight of responsibility and societal expectations. But understanding that came much later. In the moment, all I felt was the crushing weight of being told I wasn't enough by the one person whose approval I had spent my whole life chasing. This is a story about more than just building a business. It's about breaking free from the limitations that others put on us and the ones we put on ourselves. It's about turning pain into power and doubt into determination. And it's about the silent revenge that comes not from proving others wrong, but from proving yourself right. Stick with me, because the journey from that dark night to a $500,000 business was anything but easy, and every twist and turn taught me something I never could have learned any other way. The morning after that conversation with my father, I woke up feeling like I had been hit by a truck. My eyes were swollen from crying. My head was pounding, and I had this heavy weight sitting on my chest that made it hard to breathe. I called in sick to my job at the accounting firm where I had been working for 7 years, a job that paid the bills but slowly killed my soul a little more each day. As I sat there in my tiny apartment, drinking cold coffee and staring at the wall, I realized something painful. This wasn't the first time I had been told I wasn't good enough. My whole life had been a series of disappointments and rejections, but my father's words felt like the final nail in the coffin. When I was 23, I had applied to business school and got rejected. At 26, I pitched an idea to my boss about improving our client services, and he dismissed it without even listening. At 29, I tried to start a side hustle selling custom planners, but after 3 months of no sales, I gave up. If you've ever felt like the universe is conspiring against you, drop a like on this video and subscribe, because I'm about to show you how I turned all of that around. But here's what made my father's rejection different. It wasn't just another setback from a stranger or an institution. This was personal. This was the man who was supposed to be in my corner, cheering me on even when things got tough. Instead, he became just another voice in the chorus of people telling me to stay small, stay safe, and stay in my lane. I thought about all the times I had swallowed my dreams to make other people comfortable. All the times I had played it safe because I was terrified of proving him right. The worst part was that deep down, a part of me believed he might be onto something. Maybe I really wasn't special. Maybe I was just another person with big dreams and no real talent to back them up. I felt lost, hopeless, and utterly defeated. It was like standing at the edge of a cliff, looking down into darkness, with no idea if there was solid ground below or just an endless fall. That day stretched into the longest 24 hours of my life. I didn't answer calls from my mom or texts from my friends. I just sat there, replaying every failure, every rejection, every moment of self-doubt I had ever experienced. But sometimes you need to hit absolute rock bottom before you can start climbing back up. And that's exactly where I was, at the very bottom, with nowhere to go but up. What I didn't know yet was that this moment of complete devastation would become the turning point of my entire life. Because sometimes the biggest disappointments are actually blessings in disguise, pushing us toward the path we were meant to walk all along. But before I could see that, I had to make a choice. A choice that would determine whether I stayed broken or became unbreakable. Something changed in me on the second day after that conversation. I woke up, and instead of feeling that crushing weight of defeat, I felt something else. Anger. Not the destructive kind of anger that makes you lash out, but the productive kind that lights a fire under you and refuses to let you quit. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror, really looked at myself, and I made a promise. My father's opinion was not going to define my life. His limitations were not going to become my limitations. His fears were not going to become my reality. I had spent 30 years of my life seeking approval from people who were never going to give it to me, and I was done. From that moment on, the only person I needed to prove anything to was myself. Have you ever had that moment where everything just clicks into place? Where you realize that you've been giving your power away to people who don't deserve it? Comment below and tell me about it. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button, because this is where my real journey begins. I didn't have a detailed plan or a step-by-step roadmap to success. What I had was a decision. A firm, unwavering decision that I was going to build something of my own, no matter how long it took or how hard it got. I grabbed my old notebook, the one I used to sketch business ideas in, and I started writing. Not just business plans this time, but affirmations, goals, and most importantly, reasons why I was doing this. I wrote, I will not let my father's doubt become my reality. I will not shrink myself to make others comfortable. I will build something that proves to me that I am capable, worthy, and enough. Those words became my anchor on the days when doubt crept back in. Because let me be honest with you, making that decision didn't magically make all my insecurities disappear. I still had moments where I heard my father's voice in my head, telling me I was wasting my time. But now I had something stronger, a commitment to myself that was louder than his doubt. The beautiful thing about hitting rock bottom is that you stop being afraid of falling. I had nothing to lose and everything to gain. I started researching business ideas every single night after work, falling asleep with my laptop on my chest and notebooks scattered across my bed. I watched YouTube videos, read books, joined online communities, and soaked up every piece of information I could find about entrepreneurship. My coworkers thought I was crazy when I started bringing business books to lunch instead of scrolling through social media. My family thought I was going through some kind of crisis. But for the first time in my life, I wasn't living for anyone else's expectations. I was living for mine. And let me tell you, that feeling of taking control of your own destiny, that's more powerful than any approval you could ever get from someone else. What I didn't know yet was that this decision, made in a moment of pain and anger, would lead me down a path I never could have imagined. Because the best revenge isn't proving someone wrong, it's becoming so successful that their opinion becomes irrelevant. 3 months after making that life-changing decision, I took my first real step into entrepreneurship. I had saved up about $3,000 from my accounting job, and I knew I needed to invest it wisely. After endless research and soul-searching, I decided to start an online business helping small business owners with their bookkeeping and financial organization, something I actually knew how to do from my corporate job. It wasn't the most exciting or glamorous business idea, but it was practical, and I could start it with minimal investment. I registered my business as Robinson Financial Solutions on a Tuesday afternoon during my lunch break, and I remember my hands shaking as I clicked the submit button. That moment felt both terrifying and exhilarating at the same time. If you're thinking about starting your own business but you're scared to take that first step, hit the like button and subscribe to this channel, because I'm going to share every mistake and lesson I learned so you don't have to go through the same struggles I did. The first few weeks were absolutely brutal. I had no clients, no portfolio, and no idea how to market myself. I created a basic website using a free template that looked like it was designed in the early 2000s, and I spent hours writing social media posts that got zero engagement. I reached out to every small business owner I could find online, offering my services at ridiculously low rates just to get my foot in the door. Out of 50 messages I sent, I got 2 responses, and one of them was just someone trying to sell me their marketing course. The rejection stung, but it was different this time. These weren't personal rejections from people who knew me. These were just part of the game. Every no or ignored message was just bringing me closer to that first yes. I kept telling myself that every successful entrepreneur had been exactly where I was, starting from zero with nothing but determination and a dream. My first client came in the most unexpected way. I was at a coffee shop one Saturday morning, working on my laptop, when I overheard 2 women talking about how overwhelmed they were with their bakery's finances. Without overthinking it, I walked over to their table, introduced myself, and offered to help them organize their books for free, just so I could build my portfolio and get a testimonial. They were skeptical at first, but something about my genuine enthusiasm convinced them to give me a chance. I spent the next 2 weeks organizing 3 years' worth of messy receipts, invoices, and bank statements. It was tedious work, but when I presented them with clean, organized financial reports, the look of relief on their faces was priceless. They paid me $250, not much, but it was my first dollar earned as an entrepreneur. More importantly, they referred me to 3 other small business owners, and just like that, I had my first real momentum. But the road ahead was still long, and I had no idea just how many challenges were waiting for me around the corner. About 6 months into my entrepreneurial journey, something shifted inside me that changed everything. I was working with a client named Marcus, a single father who had started a small landscaping business to support his 2 kids after losing his corporate job. He was talented, hardworking, and passionate, but his finances were a complete disaster. As I helped him organize his books, create a budget, and develop a pricing strategy, I watched his stress levels decrease and his confidence grow. One day, he called me almost in tears, saying that because of the financial clarity I had given him, he was able to secure a loan to expand his business and hire 2 employees. That moment hit me like lightning. I wasn't just crunching numbers, I was changing lives. I was giving people the tools to build their dreams, just like I was building mine. If you've ever wondered what your purpose is or why you do what you do, make sure you're subscribed to this channel because understanding your why is the difference between giving up when things get hard and pushing through no matter what. Finding my purpose transformed everything about my business. Before, I was just trying to make money and prove my father wrong. But now, I had something bigger driving me. I was helping people like Marcus, people who had dreams but didn't have the financial knowledge to make those dreams sustainable. Every client became more than just a paycheck. They became a mission. I started waking up at 5 in the morning, not because I had to, but because I was excited to work. I spent my evenings learning advanced financial strategies, not because someone was forcing me, but because I wanted to serve my clients better. My purpose became the fuel that kept me going when I was exhausted, when clients were difficult, when technology failed, and when self-doubt crept back in. It's one thing to chase success for external validation, but it's a completely different thing to chase it because you genuinely believe in the value you're providing to the world. I started documenting my clients' success stories and sharing them on social media, with their permission, of course. Sarah, who grew her online boutique from $0 to $50,000 in revenue. James, who finally quit his toxic job to run his construction business full-time. Linda, who paid off $30,000 in business debt using the financial strategies I taught her. These weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. These were real people whose lives were changing because I had decided not to give up on my dream. And here's the beautiful irony. The more I focused on serving others and less on proving my father wrong, the more successful my business became. People could feel the genuine care and passion I had for their success, and they started referring me to everyone they knew. My purpose became my competitive advantage in a crowded market. It separated me from every other bookkeeper who was just going through the motions. And as my client list grew, I started to realize something powerful. I wasn't just building a business anymore, I was building a legacy. But with growth came new challenges, and I was about to learn some of the hardest lessons of my entrepreneurial journey. By the end of my first year in business, I thought I had everything figured out. I had about 20 steady clients, I was making enough money to quit my accounting job, and I felt like I was finally on the right track. But then everything came crashing down in the most unexpected way. I lost my 3 biggest clients in the same week. One moved their business out of state, one decided to hire an in-house accountant, and one simply ghosted me after I sent them an invoice. Just like that, 40% of my income disappeared overnight. I panicked. I cried. I even thought about crawling back to my old boss and begging for my job back. The voice of my father echoed in my head. "You'll never make it." And for a moment, I almost believed him again. If you've ever experienced a major setback that made you question everything, drop a like and subscribe, because what I learned from this failure became the foundation of my future success. That period taught me the most valuable lesson of my entrepreneurial journey. Never put all your eggs in one basket. I had been so comfortable with my 20 clients that I stopped marketing myself, stopped networking, and stopped growing. I had gotten complacent, and the business world has no mercy for complacency. I also realized that I had been undercharging for my services because I was afraid of losing clients. I was working 60 hours a week, but barely making enough to cover my expenses and save a little. The fear of failure had made me play small, just like I had done my entire life before that conversation with my father. This failure forced me to look in the mirror and ask myself a hard question. Was I really building a business? Or was I just creating another job for myself where I was still playing it safe and staying small? I spent 2 weeks feeling sorry for myself, eating too much ice cream, and wondering if my father had been right all along. But then I remembered the promise I made to myself, that I would not let his doubt become my reality. So I did what every entrepreneur needs to do when they fail. I got back up and learned from my mistakes. I invested in a business coach named Patricia, who taught me about pricing strategy, client retention, and building systems that could scale. I learned that charging premium prices wasn't about being greedy. It was about valuing my expertise and attracting clients who valued it too. I also learned that failure isn't the opposite of success. It's a stepping stone toward it. Every successful person you admire has failed more times than you can count, but they kept going. That's what separates those who make it from those who give up. And I was determined to be in the first group no matter how many times I had to fall and get back up again. The real turning point came about 18 months into my business when I discovered a strategy that changed everything. I was scrolling through a business forum late one night when I came across a post about value-based pricing and productizing services. The concept was simple but revolutionary for me. Instead of charging by the hour like everyone else, I could create packages that solve specific problems for specific types of clients. Instead of being just another bookkeeper, I could become a specialist who served a niche market better than anyone else. That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m, completely redesigning my business model. I decided to focus exclusively on e-commerce businesses, online stores that were growing fast but drowning in financial chaos. Have you ever had that light bulb moment where everything suddenly makes sense? Comment below and tell me about it. And make sure you hit that subscribe button because this is where my business went from surviving to thriving. I created 3 specific packages: the startup package for new e-commerce businesses, the growth package for businesses making between $50,000 and $200,000 per year, and the scale package for businesses ready to hit 7 figures. Each package included specific deliverables, clear timelines, and premium pricing that reflected the value I was providing. Instead of charging $30 an hour like I used to, I was now charging $3,000 to $10,000 per month, depending on the package. I was terrified to launch these new prices. What if nobody wanted to pay that much? What if I had to go back to my old rates with my tail between my legs? But something amazing happened. The right clients started showing up. These weren't people looking for the cheapest option. They were people looking for the best solution. They valued expertise, they respected my time, and they were willing to invest in their business growth. Within 3 months of implementing this new strategy, my revenue tripled. I went from making $4,000 a month to $12,000 a month, and I was working fewer hours because I had better systems in place. I hired my first virtual assistant, a talented woman named Jennifer who helped me with client onboarding and administrative tasks. For the first time since starting my business, I felt like I was building something sustainable, something that could actually grow beyond just me trading time for money. The strategy worked because it was specific, it was valuable, and it positioned me as an expert rather than just another service provider. I learned that in business, you don't need 1,000 clients. You just need the right clients who value what you do and are willing to pay for transformation, not just transactions. But just when I thought things were finally smooth sailing, I faced new challenges that tested everything I had learned. The journey to $500,000 was just beginning, and it was going to push me further than I ever thought possible. As my business continued to grow, something strange started happening. I began to feel more insecure, not less. By the end of year 2, I was making close to $20,000 a month. I had a team of 3 virtual assistants, and I was working with some really impressive e-commerce brands that were doing millions in revenue. On paper, everything looked perfect. But inside, I was struggling with something I never expected: imposter syndrome. Every time a new client signed up for my $10,000 package, a voice in my head would whisper, "What if they find out you're not really that good? What if you mess up and ruin their business?" I would lie awake at night, double-checking my work, terrified that one mistake would expose me as a fraud. If you've ever felt like you don't deserve your own success, or that you're somehow fooling everyone around you, hit that like button and subscribe to this channel, because I'm about to share how I overcame this and what it taught me about true confidence. The faster my business grew, the more pressure I felt to be perfect. I started comparing myself to other financial consultants who had fancy degrees from prestigious universities, while I just had my accounting certification and real-world experience. I would see other entrepreneurs on social media posting about their 7-figure businesses, their teams of 20 people, and their fancy office spaces, and I would feel small again. It was like no matter how much I achieved, it was never enough to silence that critical voice inside my head, the voice that sounded a lot like my father telling me I'd never be successful. I was trapped in this weird paradox where my business was thriving, but my confidence was crumbling. I realized that external success doesn't automatically create internal peace. You can have all the money and recognition in the world, but if you haven't dealt with your inner demons, they'll still haunt you. The breakthrough came during a conversation with my business coach, Patricia. I confessed to her that I felt like a fraud, that I didn't deserve my success, and that I was constantly waiting for everything to fall apart. She looked at me and said something I'll never forget. "Charlotte, the fact that you care so much about doing great work for your clients is exactly why you deserve your success. Frauds don't lose sleep over delivering value. They just take the money and run. Your imposter syndrome isn't a sign that you're not good enough. It's a sign that you have high standards." That conversation shifted everything for me. I started keeping a wins journal, where I documented every client success, every positive testimonial, and every milestone I achieved. Whenever the imposter syndrome crept back in, I would read through that journal and remind myself of the real, tangible impact I was making. I learned that confidence isn't something you're born with. It's something you build through evidence and action. And as I continued to show up, deliver results, and push through my fears, my confidence started to catch up with my success. But the real test was still ahead, facing the people who had doubted me from the beginning. The moment I had been both dreading and anticipating came about 2.5 years into my business journey. I was at a family gathering for Thanksgiving, the first one I had attended since starting my business because I had been avoiding my family to dodge the inevitable questions and judgments. My brother Michael was there with his wife, talking about his promotion at the insurance company. My sister Emma was showing off pictures from her recent vacation to Europe. And then there was me, sitting quietly at the table, trying to avoid eye contact with my father. My mom, bless her heart, asked me how my little business thing was going, and I could feel everyone's eyes on me. I took a deep breath and said, "Actually, it's going really well. I just crossed $500,000 in annual revenue." The room went silent. If you've ever had to prove yourself to people who doubted you, make sure you subscribe and hit that like button, because what happened next was both satisfying and complicated in ways I never expected. My father's reaction was unexpected. He didn't congratulate me or apologize for his harsh words years ago. Instead, he asked if I was sure those numbers were real and warned me not to count my chickens before they hatch. My brother looked uncomfortable, like my success somehow diminished his own achievements. My sister made a passive-aggressive comment about how nice it must be to not have a real job with structure. The only person who seemed genuinely happy for me was my mom, who squeezed my hand under the table and gave me a proud smile. I realized something profound in that moment. I had spent so much time fantasizing about this moment of vindication, imagining my father admitting he was wrong and everyone celebrating my success. But the reality was much more complicated. Some people can't celebrate your wins because your success highlights their own unfulfilled dreams. and unrealized potential. Their negativity says everything about them and nothing about you. I left that Thanksgiving dinner with mixed emotions. Part of me felt disappointed that I didn't get the recognition and apology I had been hoping for, but a bigger part of me felt free. I realized that I no longer needed my father's approval or anyone else's validation. The business I had built wasn't about proving them wrong anymore. It was about proving myself right. It was about the 20-plus clients whose businesses were thriving because of my help. It was about the financial freedom I had created for myself. It was about waking up every day excited to work instead of dreading another day at a soul-crushing corporate job. The real victory wasn't in making my family eat their words. It was in becoming the person I always knew I could be. And honestly, that was so much sweeter than any external recognition could ever be. But as I drove home that night, I knew my journey was far from over. The $500,000 milestone was just the beginning, and the lessons I was about to learn would test everything I thought I knew about success, relationships, and what truly matters in life. About 6 months after that awkward Thanksgiving dinner, something beautiful happened that made everything come full circle. I was invited to speak at a regional business conference about scaling service-based businesses. There were about 300 people in the audience, entrepreneurs, business owners, and aspiring founders who wanted to learn how to grow their companies. As I stood on that stage, sharing my story of going from a soul-crushing corporate job to building a $500,000 business, I felt a surge of emotion I wasn't prepared for. This wasn't about my father anymore. This wasn't about proving anyone wrong or getting revenge on the people who doubted me. This was about inspiring others who were exactly where I used to be, scared, doubtful, and convinced they weren't good enough. If you've ever realized that your success story could help someone else break free from their limitations, hit that like button and subscribe, because this is what true success really looks like. After my speech, dozens of people came up to me with tears in their eyes, telling me that my story gave them hope. A young woman named Rebecca told me that she had been working a job she hated for 8 years because her parents told her entrepreneurship was too risky. Another man named David said he had let his family's negativity stop him from pursuing his dream for a decade, but hearing my story made him realize it was time to bet on himself. In those moments, I understood something profound. The best revenge isn't proving someone wrong. It's becoming so fulfilled and successful that their opinion becomes completely irrelevant. My father's doubt no longer haunted me because I had built something so much bigger than his limitations. I had transformed my pain into purpose, my anger into action, and my insecurity into impact. That's what silent revenge really means. It's not about rubbing success in someone's face. It's about becoming so focused on your mission that the doubters fade into background noise. I never got an apology from my father, and honestly, I stopped waiting for one. About a year after that conference, my mom told me that he had been showing my business articles to his friends at the factory, telling them about his daughter who built something from nothing. It wasn't the direct acknowledgement I used to crave, but it was enough. Because the truth is, I didn't build this business for him. I built it for me, for my clients, and for everyone who ever felt like they weren't enough. The silent revenge wasn't in his eventual recognition. It was in the fact that I no longer needed it. I had broken free from the prison of seeking external validation, and that freedom was worth more than any apology or admission of being wrong. The little girl who once believed her father's harsh words had transformed into a woman who knew her own worth, regardless of who acknowledged it. And that transformation, that was the real victory. Building a successful business didn't just change my bank account, it completely transformed who I was as a person. 3 years into my entrepreneurial journey, I barely recognized the woman I used to be. The Charlotte who used to shrink herself to make others comfortable was gone. The Charlotte who apologized for taking up space had disappeared. In her place was a woman who spoke with confidence, who set boundaries without guilt, and who knew exactly what she was worth. My business forced me to develop skills I never knew I had: public speaking, leadership, negotiation, and strategic thinking. Every challenge I faced became an opportunity to grow stronger, wiser, and more resilient. If your goal is not just to make money, but to become the best version of yourself, make sure you're subscribed to this channel and hit that like button, because entrepreneurship is the ultimate personal development journey disguised as a business venture. The impact on my personal life was just as dramatic as the professional success. I moved out of my tiny apartment into a beautiful 3-bedroom house with a home office that overlooked a garden. I started traveling, not just for business conferences, but for pure enjoyment and adventure. I visited Italy, explored Japan, and spent a month working remotely from Costa Rica. I built genuine friendships with other entrepreneurs who understood my journey and celebrated my wins without jealousy or competition. I even started dating again after years of putting my love life on hold. And I attracted completely different types of partners. People who were inspired by my ambition rather than threatened by it. Success didn't just give me financial freedom. It gave me the freedom to design my entire life according to my values and desires, not according to what others expected from me. But perhaps the most profound impact was on my relationship with myself. For 30 years, I had carried this deep belief that I wasn't enough, not smart enough, not talented enough, not special enough to deserve extraordinary success. Building this business shattered that belief completely. Every client win, every revenue milestone, every obstacle I overcame became evidence that contradicted the lies I had been telling myself. I learned to trust my intuition, to bet on myself even when the odds seemed stacked against me, and to embrace failure as feedback rather than as confirmation of my inadequacy. The business became a mirror that reflected back my true capabilities, and what I saw was someone far more powerful than I ever imagined. My father's words no longer had power over me because I had created a new narrative, one written by my actions, my results, and my unwavering commitment to becoming who I was meant to be. And let me tell you, that version of myself was so much better than anything I could have imagined when I started this journey. As I sit here today, 3.5 years into my entrepreneurial journey with a business generating over $500,000 annually, I'd love to tell you that everything is perfect and that I've figured it all out. But the truth is, success doesn't mean the end of challenges. It just means you face different, bigger challenges. Last month, I had to make the difficult decision to fire a team member who wasn't aligned with our company values, even though it meant temporarily overwhelming the rest of my team. I'm currently navigating the complexities of whether to scale even bigger or maintain my current size to protect my work-life balance. I'm also dealing with competitors who have started copying my exact business model and pricing structure. If you think success means you stop facing problems, hit that like button and subscribe, because I'm about to share the real truth that nobody talks about. The higher you climb, the more complex the challenges become, but you also become more equipped to handle them. The business landscape is constantly changing, and what worked 2 years ago doesn't necessarily work today. I'm currently learning about artificial intelligence and automation because I know that if I don't adapt, I'll become irrelevant. I'm exploring opportunities to create digital products, online courses, and templates that could help me serve more people without trading time for money. I'm also wrestling with questions about legacy. What do I want this business to become? Do I want to build it to sell it someday, or do I want to create something that outlasts me? These aren't problems that keep me up at night in fear. They're challenges that excite me because they represent growth and possibility. The woman who started this journey 3 years ago would have been paralyzed by these decisions, but the woman I've become sees them as opportunities to stretch into the next version of myself. I've also realized that with success comes responsibility. I now mentor 5 aspiring entrepreneurs for free because I remember how desperately I needed guidance when I was starting out. I donate a percentage of my profits to organizations that help women start businesses because I want to make the path easier for others. The journey doesn't end when you hit your financial goals. In fact, that's when it truly begins. Because once you've proven to yourself that you can achieve the impossible, you start asking bigger questions. What else am I capable of? How can I use my success to create positive change? What mark do I want to leave on this world? These are the questions that drive me now, and they're so much more fulfilling than the question I started with. How do I prove my father wrong? The journey continues, the challenges evolve, but so do I. And that's what makes this entrepreneurial life so incredibly worth it. So, here's what I want you to take away from my story. When my father told me I'd never be successful, he wasn't predicting my future. He was revealing his fears. His words weren't about my capabilities. They were about his own limitations and the dreams he never pursued. For years, I carried those words like a heavy burden, letting them define what I thought was possible for me. But the moment I decided that his opinion didn't get to write my story, everything changed. Building this $500,000 business wasn't just about the money or the freedom or even the satisfaction of proving doubters wrong. It was about discovering who I really was beneath all the fear, doubt, and other people's expectations. It was about learning that I was capable of so much more than I ever imagined. And if I can do this, starting with nothing but determination and a laptop, then so can you. The truth is, we all have people in our lives who doubt us. Maybe it's a parent, a partner, a friend, or even our own inner voice telling us we're not good enough, smart enough, or special enough to achieve our dreams. But here's what I learned. Those doubts only have power if you give them power. The moment you decide to bet on yourself, to take action despite the fear, and to keep going even when things get hard, that's when everything changes. Success isn't reserved for people with fancy degrees or special connections or perfect circumstances. Success belongs to the people who refuse to quit, who learn from their failures, and who are willing to become uncomfortable in pursuit of their dreams. My father's words could have destroyed me, but instead, they became the fuel that powered my transformation. Your pain, your rejection, your doubt, they can all become your greatest strengths if you choose to use them that way. I want you to ask yourself right now, what dream have you been putting off because someone told you it was impossible? What version of yourself have you been too scared to become? What would your life look like if you stopped seeking permission and started taking action? The woman I am today, confident, successful, fulfilled, she was always inside me, waiting for me to be brave enough to let her out. And whoever you're meant to become is already inside you too, waiting for you to take that first step. So stop waiting for the perfect moment, stop waiting for permission, and stop waiting for doubters to become believers. Start today. Take one small action toward your dream, and then another, and another. Because the best revenge isn't proving people wrong. It's building a life so amazing that their opinion becomes completely irrelevant. Thank you for being part of my journey. If this story inspired you, resonated with you, or gave you the push you needed, make sure you subscribe to this channel and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next video, where we'll continue exploring stories of transformation, resilience, and triumph.